Hostage is a British political thriller. The season's first episode wastes no time setting the stage for both a political thriller and a deeply personal story. We're introduced to Abigail, who rises to the role of British Prime Minister after debating with her husband, Alex, whether she should take on the job at all. From the very beginning, this sets up one of the show's main ideas: the cost of power, not just to the leader, but to their family and the people around them. 8 months later, Abigail is already under fire. During Prime Minister's questions, the leader of the opposition, Oliver Barami, challenges her over failing to fix the NHS, even after cutting the military budget to redirect funds to healthcare. This confrontation highlights one of the central themes: the gap between political promises and the harsh reality of governing. Abigail wants to be seen as a leader who delivers, but Oliver exposes how difficult it really is to solve systemic issues. The NHS crisis also becomes a metaphor. It's about medicine shortages, but it also represents the limits of power. Even a prime minister can't always heal a broken system, no matter how much authority she has. Much of the episode revolves around Abigail's negotiations with French President Vivienne Toussaint. These scenes don't just push the plot forward, they symbolize the moral trade-offs that come with leadership. Abigail needs cancer drugs for her people, while Vivienne wants tighter border control and French troops stationed in the UK. Neither side is really focused on the humanitarian issue of the refugees on the SOS Mediterranean. Instead, they treat it as a bargaining chip. This shows the dark truth of politics. Human lives are often weighed against political advantage. Abigail herself refuses Kofi's suggestion to openly use the refugee crisis as leverage, but she keeps it in her back pocket, showing that even the most well-intentioned leaders can't escape playing the game. The real twist comes when Abigail's husband, Alex, is kidnapped. Suddenly, her role as prime minister collides with her role as a wife and mother. The hostage video demanding her resignation by 1 p.m. the next day crystallizes this conflict. Abigail is now stuck between saving her husband and protecting her political position. This echoes a larger theme of the series. In politics, personal sacrifice is inevitable. The subplot with Vivienne receiving a compromising video of herself and Matthew highlights another core idea: the vulnerability of leaders. No matter how powerful they appear, they're still human. For Vivienne, her desire to remain in power outweighs the safety of the hostages, and she pulls out of the rescue mission. This moment mirrors Abigail's situation. Both women face impossible choices between personal cost and political survival. The use of blackmail as a tool of control is symbolic of the entire system. Power here isn't just about armies or votes. It's about secrets, leverage, and who controls the narrative. Episode 1 sets up Hostage as a story about the price of leadership. The series is less about good versus evil and more about compromise versus conviction. Abigail wants to lead with integrity, but she's already caught in a web where every decision costs something, whether it's political capital, public trust, or the safety of the people she loves. Episode 2 of Hostage raises the stakes in every way. The first thing we see is Abigail realizing how little control she actually has. She turns to General Livingston for help, but he makes it clear, unless Vivienne gives the green light, any action on French soil would be illegal. For a prime minister who should represent power, Abigail is trapped in a system of rules, alliances, and politics. This highlights a major theme of the show: power does not equal freedom. Even the most powerful leader in the country can find themselves stuck, waiting on the approval of others. Vivienne's private scandal continues to weigh her down. She meets with Matthew about the blackmail video, but grows more isolated when he eventually decides he won't help her anymore. Meanwhile, Abigail is still keeping secrets from her own cabinet and even her daughter. This double secrecy, Abigail hiding her husband's abduction and Vivienne hiding her scandal, creates a parallel between the two leaders. Both are trapped by personal vulnerabilities. Both are trying to appear strong in public while being blackmailed in private, and both are finding it harder to keep their political masks on. The most horrific moment comes when the captors execute one of the doctors live on camera. This moment is brutal, but it's also symbolic. The captors are not just threatening Abigail's family anymore. They're showing that her inaction has real consequences. Up until now, Abigail has tried to manage everything quietly. But the execution forces her to face the reality that she can't keep this hidden any longer. Even the captor's words to Alex, "I had a daughter too," are powerful. It humanizes the villain, suggesting that the violence is tied to personal loss. The climax of the episode comes when Abigail finally addresses the nation. The press has found out about the abduction, and she has no choice but to go public. At first, it feels like she's about to resign, which would mean giving the kidnappers exactly what they want. But instead, she flips the script. She not only refuses to resign, but also exposes Vivienne, revealing to the world that the French president pulled out of the rescue mission because of blackmail. It's a shocking move, one that shows how Abigail is learning to fight back. Episode 2 sets the stage for the rest of the season, a story where politics, personal sacrifice, and betrayal are constantly at war. Episode 3 of Hostage pushes the story into new territory. The episode opens with Abigail back in the hot seat at PMQs. Oliver calls her out by showing a viral video of a boy who died because he couldn't get the medication he needed. Abigail refuses to resign, saying this is exactly why she must stay in power to fix the crisis. But Oliver reminds her that this isn't about her personal discretion, it's about lives. The conflict here highlights one of the show's central themes: the tension between political survival and moral responsibility. The boy's death also symbolizes the ripple effect of leadership failures. Abigail isn't directly to blame for his death, but as Prime Minister, she carries the weight of it. Vivienne's arc in this episode is all about control slipping through her fingers. Her husband Elias returns, and she finally admits to him about her affair with Matthew and the blackmail. Instead of freeing her, Elias pushes for a united family image. But Vivienne has reached her breaking point. By the end of the episode, she decides to cut ties with Elias and do things her way. Vivienne's choice represents freedom from manipulation, but it also shows the danger of isolation. By cutting off Elias, she risks standing alone in a world where allies are everything. Vivienne and Abigail finally agree to work together. Abigail wants drugs for her people and Alex's rescue. Vivienne wants help finding the mole. At first, this partnership looks like a win for both sides. But the suspicion falls on Kofi when Aisha discovers his offshore shell account. Here, the show plays with the theme of mistrust. Even loyal allies can suddenly appear guilty. The irony is that we already know Adrian is the true mole. When Adrian is finally exposed, it feels like a victory. But Abigail suspends Kofi anyway. The French Special Ops team locates the captor's new hideout. At the same time, Alex and the other hostages try their own escape plan. The rescue mostly works, but another doctor dies in the process. The rescue also symbolizes a shift in power. For 2 episodes, the captors held control. Now Abigail and Vivienne finally reclaim some ground. But the captors quickly adapt, planning new ways to destabilize Abigail's leadership. After losing the hostages, the lead captor changes tactics. Instead of targeting Abigail directly, he targets her country's stability. By disguising himself as a police officer and sparking riots at the vigil for the boy who died, he shows how easily fear and grief can be weaponized. This moment explores the theme of manipulation. Violence isn't the only weapon. Misinformation and staged unrest can be just as destructive. The captor knows that public anger might succeed in toppling Abigail. The episode ends with Saskia also working with the captors. She kills Abigail's father in the hospital by injecting something into his IV. Abigail's father represented her family's anchor, someone outside the ruthless game of politics. Saskia's betrayal also connects back to the theme of hidden enemies. Just as Adrian betrayed Vivienne, Saskia betrays Matthew and indirectly betrays Abigail. Episode 3 cements Hostage as more than just a kidnapping story. It's about how fragile leadership really is when personal pain, betrayal, and public unrest collide. Abigail saves her husband, but loses another doctor, her father, and possibly Kofi's trust. Episode 4 raises the stakes higher than ever. The episode begins with riots spreading across the UK. The people are furious over the NHS drug shortage, and Abigail's leadership is seen as the reason everything is collapsing. Even a politician is attacked on the street. At the same time, Abigail learns her father has died. She barely has a moment to grieve before Aisha interrupts with news of another attack. this time on the Home Secretary. The pressure on Abigail is relentless. Her cabinet gathers and pushes her to resign so Dan Ogilvy can take over as interim Prime Minister. But Abigail refuses. This moment highlights one of the central themes of the episode, the loneliness of leadership. Even when her father dies, Abigail cannot stop. Even when her cabinet abandons her, she clings to her position. Her refusal to step down isn't just political, it's personal. She needs to prove she hasn't lost control, even as everything suggests otherwise. Meanwhile, Vivienne's scandal deepens when the captors leak her intimate video with Matthew. Elias urges her to stay calm and do damage control, but Vivienne finally breaks away from him completely. She announces she wants a divorce, cutting the last tie binding her to his control. Vivienne's divorce represents a woman reclaiming her independence. She is no longer willing to be managed or saved by Elias. But at the same time, her public scandal shows how women in power are often reduced to their private lives. Abigail visits Kofi and learns the truth. His offshore account was set up to pay for medical care for a sick family member. Once again, Abigail misjudged someone close to her. But instead of repairing trust, she uses this moment to ask Kofi for help digging up dirt on Dan Ogilvy. Later, Matthew discovers Saskia's laptop and notices that she had been stalking him long before they met. He also finds military connections in her past, which ties into Aisha's research. Saskia once served in a branch of the military that was shut down due to Abigail's budget cuts. Saskia is ordered to kill Adrian before she can reveal too much. But in a moment of hesitation, she shoots the wrong person. Vivienne rushes Adrian away, and Adrian finally gives her the lead captor's name, Shagan. For the first time, Abigail and Vivienne have a clear name. But the irony is that Shagan is already closer than they realize, hiding among the press. Even with the new French pharmaceutical deal, which Vivienne frames as an act of goodwill, Abigail can't hold onto her position. The no-confidence vote is called, and she loses by 22 votes, and Dan Ogilvy becomes the new Prime Minister. Abigail, who refused to step aside, is now pushed out by force. The climax comes when Matthew brings Saskia's laptop to Downing Street. He, Vivienne, Abigail, and Aisha start connecting the dots. Saskia's military background, her connection to the hospital, and her betrayal. But before they can fully act, the laptop explodes. Shagan detonates it remotely from outside, walking away as chaos erupts. Abigail, Matthew, and Aisha survive. But Vivienne doesn't. Vivienne's death is both shocking and symbolic. She spent the whole episode fighting for independence, trying to step into her own power after breaking free from Elias. Her story becomes a warning. In politics, freedom often comes too late. Episode 4 is the most devastating chapter yet. Abigail loses her father, her position, and her ally in Vivienne. The nation turns against her, and the captors continue to strike from the shadows. Episode 5, the season finale, brings the story full circle. The episode begins with a flashback showing Abigail years before becoming Prime Minister. During Sylvie's birthday party, she receives a call. The Guatemalan army has invaded Belize. She has to decide whether to keep British troops there or evacuate them. If she orders the withdrawal, Belizean locals who helped the UK would likely be executed. But if she keeps the troops in place, more British soldiers could die. Abigail chooses to evacuate. This opening flashback is crucial because it introduces the central theme of the finale, the weight of leadership decisions. Every choice has a cost. Abigail's call saved a lot of British lives, but it doomed others, including Shagan's fiancée, who was left behind and killed. The flashback is also symbolic. The party setting shows how personal life and politics are never separate for leaders. Even in moments meant for family, Abigail's role forces her to act. In the present, Shagan plans his escape after bombing Downing Street. But when he speaks with General Livingston, things shift. The general never wanted Abigail killed. He only wanted her sidelined so he could grow military power. The bomb was Shagan's idea, and it backfired, killing the French president instead. Here we see a contrast between two kinds of power. The general uses manipulation and strategy. He sees Abigail as a pawn in his long game for bigger budgets. Shagan uses raw violence and personal revenge. For him, the fight is personal, not political. Abigail sneaks into the Ministry of Defense to confront the general. At first, he denies everything, but he slips up and mentions details about the Downing Street bomb that were never made public. Abigail has been doubted all season, by her cabinet, by the public, and even by her allies. But here, her instincts are proven right. Dan finally believes her and orders the general's arrest, and Abigail is reinstated as Prime Minister. But her victory is bittersweet. She regains power, yet the nation is still fractured, and Shagan is still coming for her. Shagan and Saskia track down Alex, Sylvie, and Matthew. They break into the safe house, holding them hostage to lure Abigail in. When Abigail arrives, Shagan reveals his true motive. His fiancée was a translator abandoned after Abigail ordered the evacuation. She was killed, and she was pregnant at the time. This makes Shagan more than a villain. He's the embodiment of the casualties of leadership. To Abigail, Belize was just a difficult decision. To Shagan, it was the day his whole life was destroyed. The standoff escalates. Shagan taunts Sylvie, even bringing up her grandfather's death. He claims responsibility, telling her he ordered it. Sylvie pulls the trigger and kills Shagan. For Sylvie, it's the loss of innocence. She steps into the cycle of violence, unable to resist the pull of revenge. For Abigail, it's tragedy. The daughter she once tried to protect from politics is now caught in its darkest side. The season ends 3 months later. It's election day, and Abigail chooses to run again after encouragement from her family. This feels hopeful. Abigail has survived the plots, the betrayal, and the violence. But the deeper symbolism is darker. Her decision to run again suggests that the cycle will continue. New enemies will rise, new tragedies will unfold, and new personal costs will come. The show leaves us with a haunting question: is leadership worth the destruction it causes? Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.